Somewhere beyond the dust-stained skies of Nevada, a forgotten signal awakens a truth buried in the stars, and in the heart of a man who thought he was no one. In this story, time fractures, galaxies whisper, and destiny crashes down in a glowing ship from the heavens. What happens when your past isn't from this world at all? Before we dive in, please give this video a like, a share, and a subscribe. Your support means the galaxy to me. Now, let the story begin. Noah Callahan didn't believe in miracles, fate, or anything that couldn't be taken apart and put back together with a set of rusted screwdrivers and a decent soldering iron. At 27, he lived alone in a steel container at the edge of Rose Lake, Nevada, a town so dry and quiet the wind had to remind people it existed. His home, if you could call it that, sat on a patch of cracked dirt and broken promise, surrounded by rusted junk, desert silence, and the faint hum of forgotten machines. Inside, the air smelled like old wire insulation and burnt coffee. Noah hunched over a battered workbench, the only light a flickering desk lamp that cast more shadows than clarity. In his hands was a vintage radio transmitter, the kind of relic most people would leave to rot in a junkyard. But to Noah, it was a puzzle, and puzzles had always made more sense than people. The machine had no markings, no serial number, just smooth aluminum edges and a stubborn resistance to power. He'd picked it up from a traveling junk vendor 2 days earlier, an old man with cloudy eyes who spoke in half whispers and didn't give change. Noah didn't know why he bought it. Something about the weight of it felt deliberate, like it was waiting for him. As he reconnected the final wire, something clicked inside. The machine hummed, then buzzed. A soft whir built in its core, low and steady. The transmitter's dial began to move on its own, skipping frequencies like a roulette wheel, until it stopped dead center at a frequency he didn't recognize. The speakers crackled. Noah leaned closer. A sound came through. Not music. Not static. It was rhythmic, almost like breathing. Then it shifted. A pulse. Then a tone, deep, echoing, alien. He adjusted the dial, and the machine screamed. The ground shook. At first, he thought it was an earthquake, but Rose Lake never had earthquakes. Outside, the air had gone still, too still, like the whole desert was holding its breath. Then the sky ripped open. Noah burst out of the container, heart pounding, eyes wide. Overhead, a streak of blue light tore through the heavens. Not a comet, not lightning, but something sharper, angrier. It cut the sky like a blade, leaving behind a glowing fracture that hummed with power. From that tear, something fell. Noah's breath caught. The object was small, fast, glowing. It streaked across the horizon, trailing sparks and impossible light, and crashed into the desert not far from his home. The sound followed a few seconds later, a deep, shuddering boom that echoed through his chest. For a long moment, Noah didn't move. Then he did. He grabbed his jacket, keys, and flashlight, and jumped into his rust-red pickup. The engine coughed but started, like it was just as curious as he was. The drive wasn't long, maybe 6 miles across dirt roads and sagebrush, but with every turn of the tires, his gut twisted tighter. The crash site burned against the horizon, a soft blue glow pulsing through the dunes. When he arrived, the truck's headlights caught the edge of a shallow crater, still smoking, the air around it warped with heat. And something else, a hum, like electricity mixed with memory. Noah climbed out slowly, boots crunching against sand and glass. At the center of the crater lay a sphere, smooth, silver, breathing, and then it opened. Steam hissed out, curling like tendrils into the cold night air. From within the light, a figure stepped forward, tall, poised, and unlike anything Noah had ever seen. She was human, but not. Her skin shimmered like liquid silver, her eyes deep and endless like the ocean. Long hair, glowing faintly at the tips, moved as if underwater. She didn't look lost or scared. She looked like she belonged, here, in this moment, as if gravity itself bent to make room for her. She stopped a few feet away from him. Their eyes met, and in a voice that felt like it was being spoken directly into his chest, she said, I received your signal. I've come to take you home, Noah blinked. Then blinked again. What? He croaked. The woman didn't move. She didn't blink. She simply stared at him, calmly, as if he was the strange thing in this equation, as if she'd been waiting years just to say those words. You've got the wrong guy, he said, backing up a step. She tilted her head. No, Noah Callahan. I don't, he froze. How do you? But she was already walking closer. Noah's thoughts scrambled. His heart was thundering now. This was not how his Thursday nights usually went. This was the part where normal people called the police, or NASA, or went back to bed and blamed the weirdness on bad gas station coffee. He turned back toward his truck, ready to bolt. Then she said one more thing, the thing that turned his blood cold, the machine that called me. It wasn't just a signal, it was a key, and only you could turn it. Noah stopped. What do you mean? She raised a hand, and in her palm appeared a perfect image of the radio transmitter, except this one pulsed with light, alive and ancient. It belonged to your father, she said softly. Your real father. He left it for you. Only his blood could activate it. Noah's world tilted. The desert blurred around him, and somewhere, deep in the sky above, the tear in the universe still lingered, waiting to remember who he really was. To finally go home, Noah didn't move. The woman, Alara, stood there in the fading steam, impossibly calm, as if she'd just walked out of a dream instead of a smoking crater. But the night had shifted. He felt it in his bones. The air wasn't just cold anymore, it was wrong, off, like the atmosphere itself was holding its breath. And then they came. They didn't make a sound, no roar, no hiss, not even a whisper. One moment the night was empty. The next, figures emerged along the edges of the crater, shadowy shapes, tall and too fluid, moving like smoke with bones. Their limbs didn't walk. They glided, flickered, twitched in ways that set off alarm bells in Noah's spine. He stepped back instinctively, but Alara grabbed his wrist. We have to go now. Before he could argue, she was already pulling him across the rocks and sand toward his truck, a dented red pickup that hadn't topped 50 in years. It groaned as they slammed into the cab. She didn't bother with the seatbelt. Instead, she reached out and pressed her hand flat against the dashboard. Something shifted. A hum rolled through the vehicle, deep and strange, like metal waking from a long sleep. Every light on the dash flickered, gauges spun wildly, and then the engine roared to life with a sound that didn't belong to any Earth-born machine. The truck surged forward on its own, peeling out of the crater, tires spitting sand into the faces of the advancing creatures. Noah grabbed the wheel out of reflex. Though he wasn't sure it was doing anything, the road blurred. More like the world blurred, stretching and distorting as they shot across the desert, the speed unreal. He glanced at Alara, her hand still on the dashboard, her eyes glowing faintly. She looked like she was listening, not to him, but to the truck or the thing inside it. What are they? He managed, shouting over the engine and wind. She didn't look away. They're called the Hollow-kin. Great. Creepy name for creepy smoke. Monsters. They've been searching for the signal. For you. Noah didn't respond. His mind was stuck replaying the last 5 minutes on loop. The machine lighting up. The woman from the sky. The glowing monsters. He wasn't built for this. And then it happened. They hit a bump. Not large. Just a ripple in the desert road. His hand accidentally brushed against her arm, specifically against a mark just below her elbow. It was a strange, shimmering line etched into her skin, glowing faintly beneath the surface. The second they touched, everything stopped, not physically, but in his mind. Something cracked open. A memory surged forward, but it wasn't his. Not really. He saw 3 suns, not like dreams or stories. They were real, burning across a lavender sky. Below them, a world in chaos, towers falling. People, not quite human, running from shadows that swallowed light. And in the center of it all, a man stood tall, holding a small, glowing sphere in his hand. His face, hardened but kind, turned toward Noah as if he could see through time. "Protect the boy," the man said. "And then it was gone?" Noah gasped, pulling his hand back as if burned. His heart was racing, his lungs fighting to catch up. What the hell was that? Alara's voice softened. "A memory." "Whose?" he barked. She hesitated. "The man who sent me, the one who sent you here, a long time ago." The truck veered sharply on its own, dodging something Noah didn't even see. A burst of energy hit the ground behind them, shaking the rear tires. The Holokin were gaining. Their movements weren't fast like machines. They were wrong, bending the rules of how things should move. "They're not going to stop," Alara said, still calm. "They're drawn to the core inside you." "What core?" "I'm not some kind of battery. You carry something ancient, something that shouldn't have survived, but it did." Because of him, Noah gripped the wheel tighter, even if he wasn't sure it was doing anything. "This is insane. I fix radios. I eat frozen pizza and yell at reruns. I'm not this. You are more than you've been told." He shook his head. "This is a mistake. I'm nobody." Her eyes finally met his, not glowing, just steady. "That's what he said." Right before he hid you, another blast of energy hit just behind them. The road lit up green, then blackened instantly. Noah's knuckles went white around the wheel. "You said they're here for me." Alara nodded. "Because of what you carry. You don't feel it yet, but it's waking up." And once it does, Noah didn't need her to finish. He could feel something now, just beneath the surface, like static in his chest, like a radio trying to tune itself. The truck jumped another ridge, landed hard, still holding together, still running, like it was alive. He looked over at Alara again, her silver skin catching the moonlight, and for a brief moment, despite the madness, he realized something strange. He wasn't afraid, not of her, and not of what he was becoming. He just didn't understand it yet. The storm didn't come from the sky. It came from inside Noah, a spiraling mess of questions, fear, and the kind of disbelief that made every cell in his body tense, like he was about to fall off a cliff. By the time they reached shelter, the desert night had turned colder. The truck, still pulsing with a faint electric hum, rolled to a stop outside what looked like a long-abandoned weather station, all rusted panels and shattered windows. It had probably been offline since the late 80s. Just another forgotten outpost in a place where no one was supposed to look. Alara stepped out first, her bare feet somehow silent on the cracked concrete. She scanned the horizon with eyes that still glowed faintly, then nodded for him to follow. Noah did, his mind still chewing on everything she'd said, and what she hadn't. Inside, the air was dry and stale, thick with dust and silence. Metal cabinets leaned against walls, warped by heat. A cracked monitor blinked in the corner like it remembered what it used to be. It wasn't home, but it was safe. For now, Noah dropped into a rusted chair, ran his hands through his hair, and stared at the floor. The silence stretched until it pressed on his chest like weight. Then finally, "Tell me everything." Alara didn't hesitate. She sat across from him, folding her legs beneath her like this place, this planet, didn't make her uncomfortable at all. Her voice, when it came, was softer than before, not mechanical, not otherworldly, just human. "You weren't born here," she said. Noah let out a hollow laugh. "Pretty sure I was. Your body was, but not all of you. Not your core." He shook his head. But she continued, and something in her tone made him stop arguing, because it wasn't a speech, it was a confession. "Your father was a guardian of the Lumen Order, a protector, someone who believed in balance, in protecting life across the systems. When his world, Valeth, began to fall, he didn't run. He made a choice." She paused, her eyes flickering as if sifting through memories that still hurt to look at. "He created a beacon, a signal. He embedded it in a machine, not just a signal to call for help, but to unlock what he hid. You," Noah frowned. "Why would he hide me?" "Because the ones who destroyed our home, the Holokin, weren't just after a place. They were after the energy your blood carries. You're the last link to what they fear. He sat back slowly, the chair creaking under his weight. His brain felt like it was overheating. None of this fit in the world he knew. In his dusty truck, his quiet evenings with soldering irons and static-filled music, he wasn't a chosen anything. He wasn't a warrior. He was a guy who fixed broken things, and sometimes that included himself. Why didn't anyone tell me? He asked quietly. Because they couldn't. The beacon only responds to your signature. That transmitter? It's not just a device. It's alive, in a way, and it was waiting for you to wake it up. Noah looked down at his hands. They didn't feel different, but there was something, a faint hum, a pressure, like his blood had started carrying a song. Only he could hear. I always thought, he said after a long pause, that maybe I was just nothing special, a mistake. Somebody left behind. You weren't left behind, Alara said. You were hidden because someone believed you were worth saving. Her words settled over him like a blanket. Not warm, not cold, just real. And for a moment, the tightness in his chest eased. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind scrape across the building's old tin roof. Somewhere in the distance, a creature howled, not human, not animal, just one more reminder that the world had changed. Or maybe he had. Noah looked over at her, really looked this time. Alara wasn't what he thought an alien would be. She didn't speak in riddles or act like a goddess. She was precise, calm, and grounded. And now, sitting across from him in the half-light, she looked tired. You knew him? He asked. Yes, she said. Not well, but enough. Was he a good man? He loved you more than he feared what would happen. That hit harder than he expected. He glanced away, suddenly unsure of himself. Why tell me all this? Why now? Because we don't have much time, she said. And because you deserve the truth, he didn't respond, but something shifted between them. A thin, invisible thread tying their silences together. Not tension, not romance. Something older. Recognition. Noah wasn't sure when he moved, or why, but he found himself sitting beside her on the dusty floor, their shoulders brushed. She didn't pull away. They sat there, watching the stars through a cracked skylight. Two people who didn't really belong anywhere anymore. Two people who'd both lost something big. And for the first time in his life, Noah didn't feel alone. Not entirely. The road had long vanished behind them. Noah sat in silence as the truck climbed a narrow path of dry stone and silver dust. Alara hadn't spoken since they left the weather station. She was focused, her gaze fixed on the horizon, where the stars hung low like glowing fruit just out of reach. They were heading toward a place she called Mirror Grove. He didn't know what to expect. He wasn't sure what he wanted to find. But something inside him, something he hadn't known existed, was pulling him forward, step by step, like gravity had shifted directions, and now flowed through his veins. The grove appeared just before dawn. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a forgotten canyon, jagged cliffs and scattered stone, brittle trees with silver bark reaching up like arms frozen in prayer. But as the truck rolled to a stop and Noah stepped out onto the cracked earth, he felt it. A deep humming pressure in the air, like a song played at a frequency just beyond hearing. It vibrated in his bones. Mirror Grove wasn't just a place. It was a presence. Alara walked ahead of him, barefoot, her silver hair catching the morning light. This was once a crossing point, she said quietly, when the veil between worlds was thinner. My people used to come here to listen, to remember. Noah followed her through a break in the rocks, and suddenly, the grove opened like a breath held too long. A wide, circular clearing lay before them, the ground covered in faint, glowing symbols, not drawn, but grown into the earth. In the center, a single monolith of black crystal pulsed softly, its surface alive with shifting light. Is that it? Noah asked. Alara nodded. The last memory of Valeth. He walked toward it slowly, as if approaching a sleeping giant. The air thickened the closer he got, warm and electric. Every step felt heavier, and yet somehow lighter too, like he was being stripped down, layer by layer. "Why bring me here?" he asked, his voice quieter than he intended. "Because this is the only place left where the bond can be awakened," she replied, "and because you must choose, Noah, you must choose what kind of man you want to be." He stood in front of the crystal, watching his reflection ripple across the surface like heat on metal. He looked older, tired, but not broken. "Not anymore. I didn't ask for any of this, I know," Alara said, "but it's still yours." Noah turned back to the crystal, his thoughts circling like vultures. All his life, he had been drifting, fixing broken things, trying not to fall apart himself. Now, he was being asked to step into a war, to carry a legacy he didn't understand, to become something more than what he'd ever believed possible. He could walk away. That was the part that terrified him the most. He could drive back to Rosalake, go back to his workshop, his quiet life, the safety of knowing nothing. Marie would be waiting. The sun would rise. The world would move on. But would he? Or would he always wonder what might have happened if he'd said yes? The crystal pulsed again. He stepped forward and reached out. The moment his hand touched the surface, the world fell away. It wasn't pain. It was everything else. Light poured into him, not around him, into him. Memories that weren't his, names of stars he'd never seen, the pull of distant moons, laughter and sorrow, and the raw, burning urgency of an entire people who once looked up to him, not as a leader, but as a last hope. His knees buckled, and Alara caught him. She knelt beside him, holding his shoulders, her eyes wide but steady. "You're okay. Just breathe," he gasped, like surfacing from deep water, his chest heaving. But something had changed. The weight in his limbs was gone, replaced by a steady pulse just beneath his ribs, a heartbeat that didn't belong to this planet. "It's real," he whispered. "Yes," she said. And then the sky tore open again. A pulse of dark light split the air behind them, and from the rift emerged a half-dozen hollow kin, sliding between worlds like oil across glass, their shapes coiled and expanded, limbs flickering like smoke, eyes glowing green with hunger. Noah stood, not fully steady, but not afraid. "Not anymore. They found us," Alara said, stepping beside him. Her voice didn't waver. Noah looked at the monolith, then at the creatures. "Then let's make sure they regret it." The hollow kin moved fast, too fast. But the moment they surged forward, Noah reached out and grabbed Alara's hand, not out of fear, out of instinct, out of something older than memory. Their palms met, and the space between them erupted. A surge of light burst outward, blinding and pure, carving through the air like lightning made solid. The symbols on the ground ignited, flaring blue and gold. The hollow kin screeched, their forms fracturing at the edges, shrinking from the energy. The light wasn't coming from the monolith anymore. It was coming from them. Noah felt it. The connection between them, a bond forged by more than history, more than fate, something chosen, something shared. Alara met his gaze. "It's you," she said. "You are the fire." The truck, parked a few feet away, began to tremble. Without thinking, Noah pulled her toward it. As they climbed in, the vehicle shuddered and rose from the ground. Metal shifted, glowing. The engine howled, not mechanical, but alive. The truck lifted into the air, wheels folding beneath as its frame morphed and gleamed like liquid armor. It wasn't just a truck anymore. It was a vessel, a ship, a part of him. Noah took the wheel, heart pounding. The hollow kin reformed in the clearing below, preparing to strike again, but this time he didn't run. He aimed straight for them. Alara at his side, the sky beginning to split with morning light behind them. Noah drove straight into the storm, not as the man who once fixed broken radios in the desert, but as the one who remembered what he was born to protect. The desert was quiet again. The sky above Rosalake was just beginning to fade from violet to gray, the first hints of morning softening the edges of the world. Noah stood in front of his container home one last time, the familiar hum of insects in the brush, The faint whistle of wind through rusted metal sounds that had once made him feel grounded now felt distant, like echoes from a chapter already closing. He'd parked the truck, now more starship than machine at the ridge, just out of sight. It didn't belong here anymore. And maybe he was finally starting to understand. Neither did he. He walked up the steps and opened the door. Inside, the light from the kitchen flickered gently. Marie was already awake, sitting on the old couch, a blanket around her shoulders, and a mug of tea clutched in both hands. Her eyes were red-rimmed but calm, like she'd been crying for hours and had finally run out of tears. She looked up at him, and for a second, Noah saw it all in her gaze, the worry, the fear, the silent questions she hadn't dared to ask. But what he saw most clearly was love, the kind that didn't ask for anything back. He sat down beside her. "I wasn't going to wake you," he said softly. "I knew you'd try," she replied, offering the faintest smile. Silence filled the small space between them, thick with everything they both wanted to say and didn't know how. Finally, Noah reached for her hand. "I don't know where this is going to take me or what I'll become, but I needed to see you first." Marie looked at him for a long time. "Is it dangerous?" He nodded. "Probably. Is it right?" He hesitated, then nodded again. She squeezed his hand. "Then go." The tears came, quiet and unstoppable. Noah leaned forward, wrapping his arms around her like he had when he was a kid, and the nightmares wouldn't stop. She held him tight, pressing her face into his shoulder. "You were never nothing," she whispered. "You were always meant for more." He pulled back slightly, brushing a tear from her cheek with his thumb. "You're my family, Marie." "You always will be." She tried to smile again. "You always fix what's broken." He laughed gently through the ache in his chest. "Yeah. But now I think I've got to fix something a little bigger than a busted radio." Outside, the morning deepened, painting the hills in faint gold. Alara stood in the clearing, silent, waiting. She didn't rush him. Noah stepped out. One last glance at the place he'd called home. The container, the junk pile, the desert. They had shaped him, but they no longer defined him. Alara met his eyes, her presence as still and strong as ever. "You're not who you thought you were," she said, "but you're more than you ever believed." He nodded, heart pounding, the fire inside him steady now, no longer a spark, but a source. Behind her, the air shimmered, bending like heat over asphalt. Then it split, a slow ripple that widened into a glowing portal of soft white light. It pulsed gently, like it was breathing. Noah turned one last time, taking in the horizon, the earth under his feet, the sky he'd watched his whole life. "I used to fix broken machines," he said quietly. "Now I fix what my father left behind." Then he stepped forward. The light embraced him. The portal closed behind them with no sound, no flash, just stillness, as if he'd never been there at all. 3 days later, a small package arrived at Marie's door. There was no return address, just a smooth metallic cube, warm to the touch, with a single symbol etched into its surface, a star split in two, then rejoined. She turned it over in her hands until a soft hum began to rise from within. The cube unfolded like petals opening to morning light, revealing a tiny projection of Alara's face. Her voice came softly. "He'll need you again when Earth starts to remember him." Then it faded, leaving only the symbol glowing softly in Marie's palm. She sat there on the porch as the wind swept across the land, eyes closed, holding the message close to her chest. Somewhere out there, in a sky she could no longer fully claim, her brother was flying through stars. But here, in the quiet of Rose Lake, she kept a promise, one stitched into the heart of every goodbye, waiting, watching, and when the time came, ready to guide him home. He was never just a mechanic. He was the final ember of a fallen world, the last spark of a dying legacy now reborn among the stars. As Earth fades behind him and the stars call out his name, one thing is clear: Noah Callahan's story is only just beginning. If this tale stirred something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support fuels this journey across galaxies. And remember, he will return when Earth begins to remember him.